So let's get started on our second video in this series, which I guess I'm going to be calling Solutions. And that's because we're basically going to, 1 week at a time, dive into some very common psychological, emotional, mental issues that a lot of sync licensing producers go through when they're trying to succeed in sync licensing. We've talked so much about the technical aspects of it on this podcast and on my YouTube channel, but I really want to dive into some more of the deeper emotional things that are going on with you guys, because this is, a big part of, probably the biggest part of actually succeeding in this business has nothing to do with those technical skills. It's actually really about our emotions and how we deal with lack of motivation, self-doubt, rejection, fear of failure. And what we're going to talk about today is fear of success. Believe it or not, yes, that's a real fear. And that's actually a lot of what most, or not I would say most, but a big chunk, a good significant chunk of producers do deal with. And I think a lot of producers are not even aware that it is actually what they're afraid of, is this fear of success. Now, this can come in all different types of shapes and varieties. Some of the main things that I've definitely seen, though, for a lot of you guys, especially with the comments you left me from last week's podcast and that video that I put up on YouTube asking for you guys to comment. Thank you, by the way, to all of you that did. It really helps me and helps us put together some really good content for you guys moving forward, because our whole goal here is to try to push you guys forward to get you through those obstacles and through those, seemingly, insurmountable barriers that you don't think you can get through. You absolutely can, but I think just having the right tools and maybe a different perspective can help you kind of get around some of these blocks that you think you can't really get through, okay? But this fear of success that a lot of producers deal with, it can come in a couple of different forms. And one of the more common ones that I've already seen from some of your comments is this fear of, right now you might be making music just for fun. It's kind of a hobby. It's just something that you enjoy, putting your passion into, but you haven't turned it into full-time, or certainly not even part-time yet, income. And so it hasn't been in that professional realm in your life yet. So there's this fear that when you take your music that you've just had a passion for and sort of bring it into a business like sync licensing, there's this fear that maybe once you get successful and you get accepted and you are becoming an inner circle member with the library, now you're held responsible, and now they're going to rely on you to make music. So your music creation becomes now kind of your job. It becomes sort of your income generator. So sometimes there's this fear of, well, if I succeed, do I really want to turn this into a job? And do I really want the responsibility that goes along with partnering with somebody that's going to need me for, let's say, a quick turnaround queue that's due in 48 hours? Am I really ready to be responsible to deliver my music to somebody that I'm going to partner with? So it's a heavy load to really take on. And especially if you've never done anything very professional with your music career, that is a big switch from just, I'll just make music when I got free time and when I'm just feeling it, right? This is a lot more like, well, I'm going to have to create time for making music because now somebody relies upon me. So that, believe it or not, that is a form of a fear of success. The other part of it is really also about the social implications of what happens when you set your mind on a goal, especially one that's not very common, something that's not what a lot of people are able to do in society. And you happen to be one of the only people, or one of the very few in your social circle, that can actually get to that goal and achieve it. And you would think it would be great to hope that everybody around you would just be cheering you on and be so excited for you and happy for you. But for most of us, that's just not the reality, is we're not always surrounded by the best intentioned people that want to, I wouldn't say I'd question their intentions, but let's say we're not always surrounded by people that always give us that best cheerleading and that boost of motivation that we probably want to hear from them. A lot of times they might half-heartedly congratulate us. They might secretly not be happy that we're doing what we want to do because it shines a light on them not doing what they want to do with their life. Or, they might just sort of tell you you're still in a pipe dream, that, yeah, that's great, you got a couple of placements, but you're way far away from something great. You're way far away from something. So they might be constantly trying to push you back, actually, and hold you down, essentially, kind of that crabs in a bucket mentality. So there's a lot of that can certainly go on. And when you try to do something extraordinary, something out of the ordinary, especially when you try to do something professional with your music, you are going to be bombarded with a lot of doubt, a lot of negativity from everybody essentially in your life. It's going to happen, whether or not they consciously or directly say it to you. Some people will hide it. They'll lie to you. They'll say they're happy for you, but they're really not really happy for you. So there's a lot of that we have to deal with, especially creative people doing something kind of unique here. So, but I have to be honest, with my career, I didn't deal with too much of that when I first got started in terms of the fear of success. I kind of got started thinking it's this or bust. I took failure off the table. I was like still afraid of failure. I was certainly afraid of like, well, what if I don't make it? What if I don't make enough money? What am I going to do? But my driving principle from the beginning was, I don't care what I do. I just never want to have to go get a job for somebody else again. Like that was my only guiding principle. I will be a freelance janitor if I have to do that. I will clean up roadkill from the street. I don't care what I have to do as long as I don't have to work for somebody else and say good morning to somebody and play by somebody else's rules. I just had this kind of stubborn belief that I just wanted to be my own boss and do things my own way. I felt like I was capable enough to do that. So that's where I was in the beginning. So the fear of success was really not present for me. So it's not something I can personally relate to. I just want to be honest with you guys. But Trevor and Mike definitely have a lot that they could share in terms of their fear of success when they first got started and throughout the progress and the trajectory of their career. So I'm going to let them kind of drive this conversation a little bit more than usual. So Trevor, I know that you certainly have a lot that you can talk about on this topic. Maybe you can kind of dive into, maybe you can go start with the social stuff, because I know that is a big thing for most of us that have friends, family members, coworkers. When we say we tell them for the first time, we're going to do sync licensing, and they first go, what did you just say? You're going to sync your phone to your computer? What are you syncing? What kind of music are you syncing? They don't know what we're talking about. But once we explain that, then the next level of maybe some fear, insecurities, doubt start to come in. So maybe you can kind of lead us off here.
So we talked a little bit about this last time, or in our last chat, which was the people not being very, and you just mentioned it again too, is the people not being, it's like shedding a light on people that are around you. Like if you and a friend of yours have a very similar life experience, but for some reason, like you're doing a little bit better in your career kind of thing, and they're not, it shines a light on what they're doing wrong and what you're doing right, which can cause friction and stuff. That's a given. We talked about that a bunch. That's also an internal battle. There's also this like little friend inside your head that's doing a similar thing called lack of self-confidence. And what you're doing is you're essentially like, let's say you get a little bit of success, and now it's switched from like your music career. This could be, whatever entrepreneurial thing you're going after. You're switching from, oh, I'm just doing this sometimes between my job and my hobbies and whatever. So like if I miss a day, like who cares? Like I'm not like missing a deadline or whatever. This is all in my head. This is all my own thing, my own time. But then there is that hurdle that, if you jump over, there's a bunch that comes with it. There's due dates. There's actually succeeding every time you do something. There's actually delivering something that some other person somewhere needs to approve of. Like there's all of these things that come with it. And that's scary stuff if you're not confident in yourself, because it's cool if you're at home and you're by yourself and you're thinking about your own music and you're like, well, nobody else is going to listen to it, or maybe somebody will randomly listen to it, but I'm done with this track, I'm done with this, I'm doing this, or I'm not going to work on it today. But if you are now in the success realm, you've got to answer to people, you've got to do things, you've got deadlines and all that stuff. And so the fear of now participating in all of that is it can be pretty overwhelming, because you've got to do it every day. You've got to have first you have to have the confidence to accept the fact that you can do it every day, right? And you can go, okay, if I'm a working sync musician, that means I have to do all of that stuff all the time. I have to every day succeed in a way. And if you're confident in yourself, cool, you're ready to run. You're like, I'm killing it every single day, whatever. But a lot of us aren't, And so the idea of looking down that path of like basically actually doing it, because the first part of it, just doing it for yourself, you're not actually doing it. You're just kind of making music, whatever. But actually going down that road of due dates, clients, like making revisions, like all of that stuff, and succeeding at doing all of those things, you have to kind of believe in yourself. And if you don't, then obviously you're going to be afraid of getting to that point, because you think in your mind you're going to get there and you're going to fall flat on your face. And so all of that being said, the thing that like really helped me kind of get past the whole fear of success thing, which was definitely a thing for me, which is looking at that thing that, okay, if I'm succeed, it's going to look like this, but I don't feel like I can handle that. So you kind of have to like convince yourself and figure out how you can basically look at the future and go, oh, I can handle that future. I just need to get there as quick as possible, as opposed to, no, that future looks scary and I probably can't succeed in it. So I think with all that being said, it's figuring that out first is the way, in my mind, is how it works for me anyway, to get rid of that fear of success. And that fear of success is essentially a lack of confidence in yourself for getting to the success part.
Absolutely, and that's a great point to really highlight there, because like Trevor said, you can understand, sync licensing, you can understand the business, you can understand libraries and what it really means to crank out a lot of music and sort of see your royalties. Like, you can understand all these concepts, but he's totally right. It's a completely different thing to actually go do that. And that's one of the reasons why most of what we do in Sync Academy is based around you guys doing things, not just, hopefully most of you guys watching are not just getting lost in tutorial land and just watching things and not doing things. That's why Sync 60 was created, because I wanted to give some sort of a community-wide push to all of you guys to go do something, right? Set your own goal, 60-day goal, whatever that's going to be. Get better at producing, mixing, mastering, create your album, and do it. And then set a deadline for yourself, and every single week check in and go, okay, because what you're doing there, what you don't realize, is you are essentially acting like a professional sync licensing producer. That is exactly what we do all day long. We just get a deadline for a project and the guidelines for what we're going to do, and then we sort of achieve them. You guys are, even in Sync 60, are doing something even above and beyond what sync licensing producers do, because we always get our deadlines and our briefs from external people, from other people. You guys are actually going the extra effort of creating your own for whatever you want to work on. You create that goal, you map it out, and you get it done. So if you guys can do that, you can successfully go through a Sync 60 challenge. And I've said this so many times, you can succeed in sync licensing, because that's really all you're doing day in and day out. And now they're not always going to be a 60-day goal. Some of them are going to be a 48-hour goal, because there's going to be a brief that's due in 2 days, or there's maybe an album that you want to get done by the end of the month, or you just need to fill out the rest of a library's album with 6 more tracks, and you can get that done in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Same process. It's always the same. It's about deadlines, holding yourself accountable to it, getting really healthy habits and effective producing habits basically under your belt, so it just becomes second nature to you. Now, there's still going to be days, even with all that working in your favor, where you're going to face lack of motivation. You're not going to feel like it, and that's why hopefully having a community or having some sort of tricks and some ways to kind of pep yourself up while you're feeling that way, or just taking a 2-hour break, just taking a long walk, getting some sunshine, doing something completely different from music just to kind of reset your brain, read a book, whatever you want to do. So there's a lot of things you can do, but this is really what it's about. Like Trevor said, it's about doing things, not just understanding them. So anyways, getting a little bit off the topic of fear of success, but thank you, Trevor. Really good stuff there. Mike, can you add to that?
Yeah. So for me, so first off, like when we're talking about lack of confidence and stuff like that, I just want to say that like one of the most terrifying things for a composer or for any music maker is actually just sending out your tracks, is just submitting your work and having somebody else like kind of critique it, right? So it's either lack of confidence in either your skills, but it's also, it does so many things on, that fear creates so many other things internally, in the sense of like, then you start asking yourself, well, wait, what if they like it? And then if they like it, then that means I got to do it again. What if I can't do it again? Then it's like, well, what if, like I'm going to be exposed as a fraud, like I can't really do, you know what I mean? So you start thinking those sort of things. And it's like, yeah, there's, success kind of, it's really weird, and then I know for me, where a lot of my fears of success have kind of like manifested has been coming from, a place of like, maybe not necessarily being as confident as to like, what I want to present myself as. So coming from the artist realm, as like an underground drum and bass producer for a long time, it's kind of just like as I started to succeed in that world, and that led to other things, the questions come up as like, well, do I want to be known as a drum and bass guy? And I started doing commercials and stuff like that. I started succeeding. It's like, then it's kind of like a big commercial gets on my plate, and then it's kind of just like, well, if I turn this in, it's kind of like, okay, fine, whatever. If I don't get it, that has its own fears. But then it's like, oh, if I do get it, then does that mean that I'm just a commercial guy? It's like, am I no longer cool anymore, right? So there's all those kinds of thoughts, and sometimes those can be pretty paralyzing, to the point to where it's like, and there have been instances in my career where, as a producer, I've probably, I've been presented with some big opportunities that I found ways to, kind of step away from, in the sense of like, oh, this is a big opportunity, but there's no budget right now, kind of thing. But I know that, you kind of know if you kill it, then it'll turn into something big. But that's just another thing where it's just like, well, that's just me. That's just like kind of a negative self-talk to kind of get me out of, just being afraid that I'm actually going to win. Right. And, and what that'll mean. So, and it's not so much like, okay, I don't want to put myself out there to be rejected. It's more so it's like, oh shit, if I get accepted, then what does that mean? I gotta, I have to keep this up. I gotta do this again. And even to now, it's stuff that I still combat running a company, and sometimes it's even, it's a little bit different, but it's even more so in the sense of like, well, now I feel a certain responsibility, not just for myself, but for the people that are kind of working, with me, so it's like, if I'm representing other people's music, right, it's, yeah, like there's that success which propels to the next opportunity and stuff. But then of course, like once I'm in that world, it's kind of just like, oh, like all my clients and all my composers are going to know that I'm a fraud, right? So it's like on both sides. So and it can be paralyzing in the sense of like I said, the most terrifying thing really is just submitting stuff, and that is like the number one thing that I feel like the number one goal that we all have to kind of achieve and do is just really to submit. And because most of the comments back, feedback, all that kind of stuff is out of our control. So what we can control is what we do and what we can submit. And I think like fear of succeeding for me has been at times like pretty paralyzing in the sense of like preventing me from actually submitting, because of I'll start to overthink of, okay, well, what will this lead to? So.
And so many good things you got me going there. One really important one that really resonated with me with that idea of I feel like you're going to be a fraud. Like, well, if they like this and they want more, am I going to be able to do more? That kind of thing. I've definitely felt that so many times. My big insecurity has been because I'm not classically trained in music, so I do not go by keys or knowing what key I'm in. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. I'm an ear producer. I just use my ears essentially. And obviously the stuff that I do ends up being in the right key and working together because my ears, I think, are well tuned. But I have always had that insecurity. I'm always worried that like, well, what if they come back and actually start asking me musical, questions about revisions? Like, well, is that an F sharp there? Could you turn that to? And like, oh boy. I mean, I know where an F sharp is on the keyboard, but which F sharp is I don't know, that kind of stuff. I've always had a lot of anxiety about that. Fortunately, in this industry, I have actually never been asked any sort of music theory revisions at all. I don't know if maybe you guys have different experiences, but I've actually not. Usually it's been very more like, common man sort of language about, we like that lead, but it's a little bit busy. Can you simplify it? It's like stuff like that. It's not like a musical theory kind of a thing going on there. But definitely I can resonate with that sort of insecurity for sure. The other thing you really tapped into that I really want to highlight is the identity thing, right? That like, well, if I do drum and bass or if I do rock, am I just the rock guy, the drum and bass guy? Or if I do commercials, am I now the commercial guy? That is certainly a part of your identity within this industry. Is like if you get in, like for me, I got in mostly as the rock guy. So that's how my library knew me. That's how anybody that I was working with knew me. Like they're like, Jesse, rock, right? That's just who that was my brand. They associated me with that. Now, does that mean that that's all you do is that one genre and you can't do anything else? No. But when it comes to serving, right? Remember, this is what this is all about, is serving the needs of somebody else. You have to fit a certain role for people. And if your role is, our actual role is that we don't really know who we are. We're all figuring that out every single day, right? We have things that we know about ourselves, but our identities actually evolve from day to day, and depending on who we're talking to. Like you're gonna have a different role when you're talking to your boss as opposed to your wife or girlfriend or kids or friend, right? You play different roles in your life, and we all do this. So in sync licensing, just because there's one genre or one thing that you got into, does that define you completely as a person or even as a musician? No, like that's just the role you're playing for this particular industry that you're working in right now, right? So I definitely had that issue too, where I start to get kind of like tunnel vision and not thinking about other genres or whatever, because I've been doing the same thing over and over again, and it kind of seeps into you. You think like, well, this is just who I am. It's really not though. It's a craft. It's just what you're working on right now, and it might be something you're really, really good at. So the way that I see it is that like sometimes, I think not very often, but sometimes how I'm feeling and the kind of music that I really want to make will line up perfectly with an opportunity that a library I've partnered with. And when that happens, it is awesome. It's just this really cool, those are the days you're really thankful that you're in sync licensing, because you really are getting to show and put together your and use your passion for your job, and that's really, really awesome. But just like every other job, everything else where you're trying to make money, there are going to be many days where you're doing things that it's not exactly your top pick, but you can find a way to get excited about it. And that's kind of what we have to do in this business. And so let's say you're not exactly excited to make another R&B song or another rock song, but you can figure out some way in this gig to realize, okay, this is, first of all, they're asking this of me. I have a privilege here because somebody needs something from me, and they're asking. I mean, how many people are being asked to do something professionally on a music-based level? Very rare. It's very, very rare. Most people are just opening up their DAWs, putting it on SoundCloud, and that's as far as their career is going. So if you're in that fortunate position to have somebody asking you, especially when there's money and there's a client attached, asking you for your passion and for your work, you can figure out a way, I hope you can figure out a way to get excited about that you're actually doing something useful for people, and you're going to make their project, their lives, something better or easier by your effort, right? But yeah, just not getting so zero in and pigeonholed into thinking that, well, I do this, that's who I am. It's really not. And that's why I think it's still important, even if you go deep into sync licensing, and especially if you do kind of get into one particular sound or genre, maybe once a month, like, get out of sync licensing mode. Just open up your DAW and play something completely out of your realm, right? Go open up just a piano and play a piano piece, or get into orchestral stuff. Do something just for yourself, reinvigorate yourself, fall in love with music, because you are a music producer. That doesn't mean that you get pigeonholed into one thing the rest of your life. And just so you guys know, just even though I do say that you stick with one genre in the beginning of this, as you evolve, you will move into multiple genres. You can ask Mike, Trevor, myself. We do multiple genres, but in the beginning, usually it's best to just find that one thing that you can really carve out a niche on. Wear that one little hat. I'm the rock guy. I'm the underground, D&B guy, whatever it is, right? I'm that guy. You call me when you need that. So you're basically like putting on a very specific role, and then as time moves on, you can open that up. So, anyways, Trevor, you have some final thoughts for us, or some more to share?
Yeah, actually, when Mike was talking, and then a little bit when you were talking, it kind of reminded me of an epiphany that I had when I became a father, which was, or not right when I became a father, but as I was watching my kids kind of grow up a little bit, and make a bunch of noise, is that I start talking about them and they start making a bunch of noise, is that they're a reflection of you, like, and it's something that I realized when, like, certain behaviors would happen, and I was like, man, like, why are they behaving this way? And if I was honest with myself, it was because I kind of instilled that bad behavior in them and have to now fix that. Now, that is also true in your career. And it's one of the hardest things to admit, because it's like looking in a mirror every morning and being like, my decisions have action, or have my actions have consequences or rewards. And if I don't land a thing, I do whatever it is that happens, I got to throw all excuses out the window, because ultimately it is my decisions that make this happen. So if, putting the parenting thing away and putting the entrepreneur, your music career, if you spent your night playing video games instead of working more on your thing, or you were social and went out to the bars and stuff like that, you are seeing the results of that in your success, and looking into that mirror is hard to do. And so having that kind of fear of not looking away from the mirror and constantly looking at the mirror is also a very big hang up. It's something that I know that I was hung up on for a long time, which is this kind of like, I remember, and this is true for like when I was playing basketball, like I keep going back to the basketball thing. It's like, I didn't practice as hard. So obviously I'm not like, I'm sitting on the bench, because when I'm in the game, I'm not doing as good because I was playing video games instead of, practicing more. And it's true with your music career. But like, to me, it was pretty easy to admit that. But I think a lot of people, it's not, where, you kind of come up with, I don't know, maybe I do this too, even to this day. But, you come up with excuses of, oh no, I deserve to, have this like 2 days just to do whatever, or I deserve this, or I deserve. But then after you do all those things, you come back to the mirror and be like, well, my career doesn't look like how I want it, and the only person I can blame is me. And if you're not good at taking responsibility, that whole thing kind of it just stops you. You just kind of get stuck in place, because you're not admitting what you need to admit to like move forward and really like the career you're looking at, which is, a reflection of your own, your faults, your pluses and minuses, and your decision making and stuff. So anyway, yeah.
Big stuff, man. Yeah, that's a really really hard thing for all of us to do because it is true. It is true. Your kind of life and your situation in life is basically I see it as a reflection of your choices. Like every day you just give. This is kind of the thing that I've been doing, with these sort of affirmations or kind of like trying to put my head in a better like a positive spaces. Every day when I wake up, now I'm thinking, okay, I have choices today. What kind of choices do I want to make? Basically, no matter what day you have, you're going to have good things happen to you, bad things happen to you. That's all out of our control. But what you get to control is your choices. And some days I don't make good choices. Just some days I fall short. I don't eat well. I'm crabby. I'm moody. I don't stay as productive as I wanted to. I get lazy, right? And other days I'm like, you know what? I could eat something really bad, but I want to eat something healthy. And I could not go work out, but I'm going to go work out. So again, you're so right about that. That I feel it's like your choices are really what's driving the quality of your life. And so, and these are tiny, tiny little choices that we're making. Whether or not you want to spend even just 5 minutes a day getting better at using a plugin or whatever it is. Even if you can, if that's all you can squeeze into your day, you can still choose to put that 5 minutes into your day rather than not put that 5 minutes in your day. So there's all these little choices. So it's really wise, man. I'm glad you brought that up. Mike, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up here?
Yeah, something I wanted to add was that, at least for me personally, part of the fear of success also ties with like the fear of work, actually, which is kind of interesting. So it's like, and what I mean by that is, in my mindset, it's kind of like sometimes I'll catch myself, feeling like, oh, well, I've been working so hard to get to achieve this one level, to get to achieve this one goal. And then when I get there, then I, start to think like, oh, wait a minute, if it took me so much work to get here, now that I'm here, it's going to take me even more work to stay here, and then the questions start flooding in of like, did I even want to do this in the first place? You know what I mean? It's just like, it's like, yeah, I've been working so hard and I'm going to be working even harder. I don't do I want to work this much kind of thing? And I think like for me, what's helped is, or what I try to do is just try to remind myself that those are really the wrong questions, and remind myself as to and try to pay attention as to when I actually ask myself those questions. And it tends to be after the work is already done, So during the process, I don't even notice the time. I don't even notice the effort that's put in, I'll put in long days too, 15+ hour days, but I'm having so much fun. I'm loving what I'm doing that it's just, the time's just going by and I'm doing it willingly, So it's kind of like if I succeed at that, then I just have to remember, it's like, well, I'm going to do that willingly too, So, but the problem is it's definitely hard. It's not an easy thing to always remember. It's not an easy thing to, and I know for one of my last points, what that kind of plays into as well for me sometimes is, that can play into, like if I have that big opportunity in front of me, but it's like more long-term, it's, it's a lot of work. It can be a big payout, but let's say it's more deferred payment. It's not as guaranteed versus a short, smaller opportunity that comes up right away, and you have to make that decision. There's definitely many times in my career where I've made the decision to be like, okay, let me get the small, quick, guaranteed money right now, knowing that like that's not exactly what I want to do. It's not really feeding my soul. It's not all of that. And possibly even that it's not as much work, so it's easier. But, I think that like, yeah, and it's not necessarily as much fear of like, okay, well, if I take on this bigger project, am I going to succeed? It's more the fear of like, oh, if I do succeed, then, all of that effort it's just going to keep compiling on each other, and I don't, and what holds me back is that thought of like, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if like, I think maybe I do want to be lazy, right? But like, again, always, those thoughts always occur when the work is done. Because during the time I'm working, it's like, I don't even think about that. I'm not being lazy just by default because I'm loving what I'm doing. I'm just putting everything into it. So.
Yeah, that's a big one too. That sort of once you're in, you're really in, and you've built this whole foundation and you're in this career now. But now once that's built, you're going to be relied on to keep that going up. So, and it's good. I don't think that's a bad thing, to certainly, I guess, double question, second guess your path once in a while, just to make sure you are on the right path, that you are doing something you really want to do. Totally can relate to that too, Mike. There'd be many opportunities in my career where it'd be a short-term, sync fee, not a lot of work, or something that's just, even no fee, no upfront fee, but definitely a lot of back-end stuff, and trying to figure out, it depends on really. Ask me what time of the year, do I have a big tax bill I got to pay? Is it, do I have things I got to do? Then I might make a different kind of a choice. But I think for me, and I think I've shared this many times, and maybe we can close out on this thought, is that in order to really succeed in this industry, you have to be looking at this completely long term. And when you can start to get into that mindset where you're not even worried about I don't care if I get paid next month. I don't care if I don't get paid my royalties for the next 9 months or 12 months, which I know sounds crazy to a lot of people. But if you can get into that mind space, it's like this Zen place where you're hovering above the earth, you have no gravity. And you're just going to cruise through this business, you really are, because so many people, they're just on the bumpiness of the day to day. I need a paycheck, I need royalties, where's my money, where's my that, and they're just on all of these these bumps because they're expecting things. I expect this, I expect this, I expect this. And when you have just a better realistic expectation of I'm building a long-term career here, and I'm also building look at all the skills we talked about though: perseverance, setting and achieving goals, confronting your fears, looking yourself in the mirror, doing some introspection of taking responsibility. These are way bigger than just sync licensing. And even though this is a big industry, these are skills that you're going to take with you, even if you decide in a year or two that sync licensing wasn't your last destination, it was just sort of one stop on it. You take all of that with you. So there's really no loss in any of this. So if you can kind of go through this industry with that mindset of I can't lose, that's essentially what you're saying, right? Can't lose, and I can wait for money. It's okay, I can wait. Now, obviously, everybody has a different financial situation. Some people have bills you got to pay right now, and you can't afford to be waiting months and months. So I empathize with that. I understand that. You got to take care of what you got to take care of. But if you can somehow get yourself into a minimal lifestyle so that your bills come down, or figure out something else with independent freelancing work, or just saving money, or whatever you got to do to get to that point where you can kind of just lift off the ground a little bit and not worry so much about expecting things all the time. It's a weird thing. The less you expect it, the more things come. It is just something I've definitely noticed in my life for sure. And lately, I've done this in the last 2 or 3 months, trying to let go of expectations and finding that I'm much more fulfilled and much more happy about everything in life. Just because my expectations of things, I'm trying to just whittle those away so that when I get anything good, I'm surprised. I'm this is great. This is awesome. And when I don't get something good, I'm oh, that's kind of a bummer, but it's okay. I wasn't really expecting so much, so it doesn't really let me down as much either. So trying to ease off a little bit of that entitlement that I'm certainly guilty of. I have a lot of that in me that I'm trying to work through and push away. So this is the kind of stuff, guys, that we are talking about in this podcast, and we're going to talk about more in the future. But if you made it through this podcast all the way to the end, I'd like to know by having you comment below on my YouTube channel, right where I posted this video, and let us know if you're dealing with a fear of success and what your fears are. If we nailed it with what we were talking about, if maybe we missed something specific that you're really afraid of, that you can have some insights. The more you share with us, the more you can leave us comments, the better we can create better new content and tutorials for you guys in the future. So can't wait to hear what you guys give us, and thank you so much for watching and listening.